If we could call the meeting to order, and I would like to welcome everyone to the Thursday, March 25 budget workshop of the Barefoot Bay Recreation District Board of Trustees. We'll start the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. Kathy Mendez, would you please lead us? Thank you. Mr. Gruno, would you call the roll?
Mr. Loveland. Here. Mr. Gruno, here. Mr. Morrissey. Here. Mr. Nugent. Here. Chairman Mino.
Here.
I also note that we have John Coffey, our community manager, Kathy Mendez, food and beverage. We have our clerk, Stephanie Brown. Hiding outside, I think we have Charles Henley of financial and Rich Armington of HR and resident relations. Mr. Chairman, we have a quorum.
Thank you, sir. Again, we are in a audience participation. Do we have any audience participation, please? No letters, no phone calls, no audience. Oh, go ahead. Sure.
Elaine Vanbershot, 1090 Parkway Lane. I spoke earlier, Mike, to you, and I just want to clarify. On the $1,000 or $1 million bank loan / bond, that is no longer in play. But there is $750 that is in play, correct? If I'm reading this correct? Removal of $250,000 from Lounge Lakeside Expansion Project. Does that allow then for $750 left to play with?
No. John, why don't you answer? Go ahead. It's a good question. Good question.
$750,000 that's in this year's budget is contingent on a bank loan.
Right.
So if the bank loan doesn't go through, that $750,000, there's no funding for it.
Okay.
See, it was a total of $1 million, and that was all part of the $1 million.
All right. Then I do want to just lend my voice to say that I do believe that the community center is that area. And with COVID and going forward, the buildings themselves almost become less of a concern, which is good because we can't expand the lounge due to the parking. So I'd like us to see more of an investment into the outside of the lounge to make it easier to have more people there without getting it too crowded. For instance, raising the pit up or filling it, knocking that building down, and at least having some awnings, as Kathy has now, to cover some of those areas. I think it would be so good for the community. Right now, when we have groups over there, Kathy's slowly trying to open up, but you've got a multitude of people that pull their golf carts to the side of the fence and stay outside because they're nervous about coming inside because it's too close of an area to deal with. And I just think going forward, we're going to have more of this, I hate to say pandemic procedures, but I think we are going to have more of it. So, once A is done, let's look to the lounge and let's not put it on a back burner. I do not want to see it go the way the bathroom situation did at the beach, where we keep waiting and waiting and waiting, and the prices go up, up, and up. So that's my opinion.
Thank you. Thank you, Arlene. And as I indicated to you, this is a budget item that has been eliminated. It doesn't necessarily eliminate any thought of the lounge. So it's a budget item that's been eliminated. Okay, any other audience participation? Am I on? It doesn't sound like I'm on. I'm on, okay. Okay, again, this is a budget workshop, and if you would allow me, I'm going to step in right off the bat and revisit an item that we talked about in our last budget workshop, and that is the analyst position. And you know that this is a budgeted item included in the SDS management contract. You also know that since last October I've been against this position because it is included in the SDS contract. Having said that, we discussed it at the last meeting, and it was a consensus of the board, 4-1 against me, that we would keep it as a budgeted item. Okay? Having said that, after the meeting, the last budget workshop, I believe, or maybe it was the last BOT meeting, I'm not sure, John approached me and said, Mike, we can probably get that out of the SDS contract, if that would help to encourage and to promote this and to try to find a candidate. And really right now, SDS is not doing a whole lot to look for candidates to even fill this. So if you'd allow me with that, I talked to Cliff, and Cliff contacted SDS. And let me read parts of this letter. In accordance with our discussion this morning, it is my understanding that SDS would agree to waive its entitlement duty to administer the filling of the management analyst position under amended Section 3B4, scope of service, and its entitlement to the associated management analyst fee under Section 7, compensation, of the revised agreement, and would not object to Barefoot Bay Recreation District filling the position as an in-house position employed directly by Barefoot Bay Recreation District. Cliff then asked if SDS would send a confirmation letter, and SDS from Todd Woodruska, is that how you say it, Woodruska? Woodruska. Cliff, this email confirms that SDS agrees with your understanding pertaining to the management analyst position in relation to our contract with Barefoot Bay Recreation District. We are happy to accommodate with whatever you feel appropriate going forward. So with that, we will get, well, let me back up. With that, I would like to go tonight with a consensus of the board to authorize Mr. Coffey to immediately search for candidates for the position, to interview for the position, select the person they wish, and bring them on as soon as possible. I would then ask that Cliff will go and get a formal letter of understanding from SDS, which they've already agreed to. And when that person is filled and hired, she is brought to the board so that we can then meet them. Any questions about that? I think we are all in agreement, or you are all in agreement before, that we wanted this analyst position. It is budgeted item. This would be a way of filling the position because, again, my opposition before was that it was part of the SDS contract.
So, Mark, are you saying this person that John would recruit would come before the board for an interview or just a meeting?
No, I'm not, man. No. I simply say he is going to go out and get a qualified candidate. They think they can get a person. He selects who they think. Simply bring that person to us at the board meeting after that, introduce he or she, and so we know who they are.
Okay,
that's all.
That's reasonable, yeah.
I think the timeline is good, too, because as we finish out the spring semester at some of the universities, there might be some good pickings.
Mr. Morrissey, Mr. Dugin, any other comments? No? Okay, then, again, I would like to acknowledge a consensus that we authorize Mr. Coffey to do this. So I am all for this. Mr. Nugent?
I am for it.
Mr. Morrissey? I am. Mr. Gruno? Yep. And Mr. Loveland?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, that solved our problem, John. Okay. And again, as soon as we can get that person on, the better for us because we will have the help that is needed. Review of proposed fiscal year 22-26 budget. Mr. Coffey.
To go and just to add a couple last things to that last discussion item. Based on that independent discussion, I ran the numbers, and it's a revenue neutral move. Actually has potential save a few $1,000s. We will bring you the pay plan to amend that on April 9th to add the title, so we're all legit, and we will get that advertised next week. At the last budget workshop, basically the one big change, as alluded to in audience participation, was the removal of the $1 million loan and everything that's tied into that, the $25,000 invalidation costs from FY21, the reserves that were used to balance the budget, making up for the $750,000, and then the debt service principal. and also the $25,000 from next year's budget. Basically, that gives you a one-time surplus of about $286,000 in this year's budget. Anything the board wishes to discuss, the managers are here. Mr. Getz had a family issue that he couldn't be here tonight, but we have talked about the most likely points of discussion, and I feel confident I can represent him. So anything the board like to discuss, we are ready.
Yeah, I want to open up the discussion on the lounge project, not what we've taken off, but what we can do. And I want to make sure that we've got something allocated in this budget to move forward with, even if it's a minimal amount on the lounge. And that's just maybe expanding to an outside bar, moving the pool pits as we had planned, and expanding the sun deck area so that we can provide more chairs and tables. And
I think there needs to be a compromise between the build-out that we were talking about and making the outside more useful. I agree with what Elaine was talking about. I think the more we can move stuff outside, the better off we are.
We are going to, I'm sorry.
I just question if we have a projected price tag for that.
Not doing it piecemeal. One of the very attractive nature of the project was eliminating the multiple different levels of concrete. If we were to go in and replace basically the lakeside assembly area and pour that all over, we estimate that's about $120,000. That does not address drainage because the project we have designed included French drains throughout the area to quickly get water off. Filling in the step area, which I believe is what Trustee Loveland was referencing, it had been proposed to fill it in, compact it in a wall and concrete it over. That becomes a larger project than by itself because you have drains coming and emptying out in that area, and you have bulkhead on one side. You can do piecemeal issues. You just have to understand you have limitations that you're not going to have well-drained area. Your concrete work, if you don't want to address the trip and fall risk, which our insurance company last year settled in my opinion, a frivolous claim for $32,000 on a trip and fall in that area. You're going to have more of those. But we can try to, for a future meeting or workshop, try to get estimates of doing specific piecemeals on that. If you want to look at, doing that outside, the outside bar was tied in with the food prep expansion area, and that was estimated to be about $250,000 combined. If you just want to do the outside bar, we probably can isolate that price. And if you want the wraparound canopy, we probably can isolate that price rather easy. The hardest price is probably the step area because that gets into the drainage issue that's existing there. But if you give me specifics what you'd like priced out and a little time to work with the engineers, we probably can get you some estimates.
John, is there any my idea on that was more of getting rid of that building. Is that where the old heater building?
Well, that's where the current heater is. And to move the heater, you have to upsize the pipes to the pit. And we have asked our pool vendor to design a new pit, and he hasn't gotten that done yet. I don't mean to sound pessimistic, but realistically, I don't think we get that project done this summer because he doesn't have the design for it yet. And that project, that gets into a timing phase. Immediately west of the lounge and slightly towards the lake, that area of concrete needs to come up if we're not doing this project next summer. And that's probably a $10,000 to $20,000 pour. Well, next summer when you take down the heater building and replace the pool pit, you'll be cutting through that area again. And then at that point, if you wanted to tear up everything and re-pour it, or you can see if you don't tear up everything and re-pour after you do the pool pit replacement and relocation of the heater, you've got a lot more. No matter how much concrete guys will tell you they can pour patchwork level, over time there's always settlement and stuff. So it's how much risk you want to deal with that project going forward.
Was the building where we have the heater, the big, you said it's almost ready to fall down or whatever. So was that part of the whole project before, removing that and moving that, or is that something separate we have budgeted for separately?
The heater building, the big obstruction,
yeah,
that's not the structural problem. It's the pit over by the pool that is the danger, and that's an issue of collapsing in. Those two projects, there's funding, separate funding for those. That's not included in the $1 million, and I can pull.
And that's in what year?
Well, right now it's in this year, but we don't anticipate getting that done.
Okay, but so make sure we understand though. So that is already planned to do that, which would open up part of what you're talking about, right, Randy? So
right.
So that's already planned. That's not being eliminated by eliminating $1 million.
No.
Okay.
I just highlighted you have roughly $105,000 for those two projects.
Okay.
And
I think Chairman Mino made a good point last week. I think if people see work being done, if they see, we were talking about the tennis courts, if they see progress, even if it's small progress, I think it makes people much happier. But if everything grinds to a complete halt, I think that's just seeding angst.
And my thing is that if we have that heating building gone and the pool pump, and since those are projects that are already budgeted, if we added, what we could then look at is having the outside bar area and maybe the awnings around the outside area of the lounge as it is. But with that pump with that heating house and the pump gone, that does automatically give us more seating out there.
Exactly.
And levels that out.
Right.
And that kind of takes care of that. And then it's just a matter of buying the furniture for it, and which would be that in and of itself would be a huge improvement.
I agree. I think just two things that are already budgeted. I mean, if those are going to occur, if we can get them done, I mean, but that's already in the plan. So by eliminating that $1 million, that doesn't change that, which would still give you more room.
So if we
I think you're right that we have to look at those kinds of things to see what we can improve out there.
So if we could back up and say, let's go for, let's get some pricing then on the outside bar and on the awnings.
But the awning, isn't that the big thing that was part of the $1 million, or am I wrong?
The project was originally planned to be done over 2 years. The first phase, which was $750,000, was ripping up all the concrete, putting drainage in, filling in the smoking pit area, expanding the assembly area out into the step-down area, sort of squaring that off, and then pouring that all flat with various French drains in it, and putting a metal wraparound awning and basically doing away with those two standalone canopies and the awning off of the back of the lounge to have a wraparound one. That was the first phase. The second phase was to square off the north side of the building, bring the walk-in cooler inside, have a food prep area so you're not dealing with crock pots in a corner right behind the bar, and put the outside bar on the the south side of the building.
So, and I apologize because I really don't understand contractual things like that, contracting. So you're talking about drainage. Is there a problem with what we have there now? No. You keep talking about this drainage, there'll be a problem. I guess I don't quite understand. If we simply move that building and you can't just lay some concrete down and make the thing flat, you have to do what is the drainage?
Building A parking lot has drainage at one end of the parking lot. And if you go up to Winn-Dixie or any Walmart, any parking lot put in the last 30 years, there's drains throughout the parking lot. When it rains, you have a lot of puddles in our parking lot because you're trying to slope it in the long direction. You just have uneven concrete. The part of the concept, once the board understood they didn't have room for parking to expand the building the way they originally wanted, was to try to maximize outdoor events, and that's where the big awning came into. Well, part of when you have a rain shower go through, people, especially with the population of Barefoot Bay, is you want to get your surface from wet to dry as quickly as possible. If you don't have French drains everywhere in a big concrete area, you're going to have standing puddles because nobody can pour perfectly flat, slightly sloped concrete.
But do you have them there now, drainage? It is there now.
There's some, but there's also the back of the lounge. We're getting ready to cut up that concrete to put in a French drain because there's a huge puddle when it rains the back of the lounge that has generated complaints for years. So there is some. It always can be better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I will attest. The back of the lounge, where that awning is, Mike, when it rains, if we have a heavy rain, you can have 2-3 inches of water out there. I mean, you're sitting there and the water's up to your ankles. But we keep sitting there.
Well, I guess, and as I mentioned earlier to Randy and to Elaine, I'm not against at all looking at things that we can do, whether you want to call it piecemeal or whatever. I'm not against a bar. I'm not against moving that building and getting more space and everything. So I guess we ask that you look at what?
Well, I don't.
I mean, we don't want to say we're going to do piecemeal things and all of a sudden have another $700,000, $800,000 bill, because that doesn't make any sense.
Well, and I don't really look at it as piecemeal. I look at it as just taking it, going in the same direction, just taking a different size of step. So, whatever is first is first. If getting the groundwork out there and everything level, if that's the first thing, we already know that that's budgeted. That's great. Now, what can we carve out as a next step? Would it be the outside bar so that we have more service, better service? Because moving the building, filling the pit, is gonna provide a lot more seating. Right. So, what is the next thing that we would want on our improvement? Would it be an outside bar? Because if you look at the bar that we've got there now, I was up there today for a meeting, and I can't help but think when we're not using that there's got to be some fall hazards there, because we had like the landscaping blocks that I guess are held to hold the bar in place, but they were just kind of scattered loose, and they were out where somebody could have tripped over it. We've got a bar that both of them are pretty heavy. I mean, they're made of wood and 2x4s, and we've got bartenders having to lug those things around. So I can only see workers' comp accidents happening from and back injuries from all of the portability of moving ice and bottles and things like that they have to do now just to set up. So maybe that is where we look at, because we've got a high exposure there. And then next, look at the awnings around the lounge, if that's what we need. Kathy'd be better to address what we need, and then, we just take it in step by step and what we can pay for.
Well, the other thing, I guess, too, is, if you look at this, the pit and the heater building is already budgeted, and you said we're possibly looking at $286,000 to the good after we make these changes. So we already have some money that's available to use. So
I would also say probably reappropriate the Beach Pavilion, because that's probably never going to happen, especially if we got to put it up with pilings. There's 56,000 right there. Not that the Beach Pavilion's a bad idea. In fact, I think it's a fun idea. But I think if we moved that 56,000 over to the lounge, we'd have much more happier people.
John, a quick question. Any of the projects that we're talking about can be done this fiscal year, or due to timing, they have to be put off till next fiscal year?
Well, we have a full plate already this fiscal year. It depends what ones you're talking about. If you're talking like HVAC replacement, truck replacements, those are easy to do. If you're talking significant capital projects, the kitchen trailer is a procurement that can be done. You get into cash flow issues too. We don't have just unlimited money this year. Next year's budget is based on next year's revenues being received too.
John, can you tell me a little bit about the kitchen trailer?
I can give you an overview, and Kathy can be specifics. About a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, the health department changed their interpretation of their codes, ending our ability to serve food per order from our grill area. The only way to serve hot dogs or hamburgers per order is to build a building or get a food truck or trailer. And this would allow at street dances and other outdoor events to have a cook at a grill and walk up and get a hamburger or hot dog, whatever, fresh off the grill, versus cooking up 50 hamburgers and keeping them warm and then selling them like that.
So, Kathy, would that take care of, at least temporarily, would that take care of not having a big cook area or a big prep area in the lounge? I mean, could we use that during all the lounge hours?
Yes, it becomes much more important as the elimination of that kitchen behind the lounge. And it's a food truck, but it's not mobile. You can actually pull it, but it has a grill, burners, fryers, a hood, workstations, refrigeration. So they're self-contained, and we can open it up every day and serve out of it. Much more options than we have ever had at the lounge and the pool.
To me, that kind of makes sense because, again, I was up there today, and we had 2 bartenders, and both of them were spending far more time in the kitchen area pulling together pretzels and hot dogs and trying to work out of the meager things that we've got to work with, that they actually weren't serving drinks. I mean, they did. They eventually did get around to serving the customer their drinks, but the time was so divided that those that were in there with cocktails and things were not getting their cocktails as quickly as those that were trying to get their food. And if we had that out in the trailer, that would free up the bar then to be a bar, right?
And that COVID changed our operations so that we don't normally, and we had 2 bartenders on because pickleball was coming in, so It was a special occasion even to have 2 bartenders. So we typically have 1 bartender and 1 kitchen helper, to do sandwiches and salads, but we always had a very minimal menu option, and we've talked about this many times. People are looking particularly at street dance for burgers, and the addition of fries would be great, but wings. There's just a variety of food options that they'll have in that area.
But the bartender wouldn't have to take the food order and deliver
No,
the food
in long
order
term,
and
the
all.
bartender would never have had to do that. But we would have cooks in the kitchen trailer preparing and cooking food.
Kathy, right Right now, when we have these bands on the weekend, and we were there the other day in our golf cart listening, and my wife was telling somebody, well, they have food there. We have food there now? I mean, where is that coming from?
Hot dogs and special sandwiches.
And
they're typically
all made
prepped
ahead of time, or what?
The hot dogs are in a crock pot. And the 19th hole is preparing the special sandwiches, and we box lunch it.
I got you.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think the mobile kitchen's a good idea. Let's say we have a hurricane, it could stand in as a backup food location. So I think that's a great investment.
So I would think we're in agreement that as we go forward, number one, we're not just throwing the lounge project, the lounge improvements out, number one. Number two, we go forward, we're going to look at the different kinds of things we can do to improve the lounge, to improve the space over at the lounge, those kinds of things, and without going into this $1 million loan project that we had taken out of the budget.
Yeah, I would definitely support that.
Good with me.
I hope we gave enough, did we? Or no?
You give us good general direction,
Yeah.
but I think somebody's going to have to make some more decisions going forward exactly what you want, because whether that's a subcommittee or another workshop, I've got direction to get pricing on individual outside bar and wraparound canopy, but I've also heard things about talking in sequence. And once you put up a canopy, you're basically, without spending a lot of money, forever living with the grade of your concrete the way it is, because you'd have to take down the canopy to tear up the concrete to replace all the drainage and stuff. So we can run forward, but don't expect us to come back with this whole new set of plans, because you've given us, go forth and prosper, but not a lot of detailed direction.
Well, number one, when do we think, or maybe you answered that already, when do we think that the heater building, the pit, those two projects that are already budgeted, when did we think that those would happen? Do we have any idea?
I think realistically, spring and summer of 2022.
Spring. So we're really not going to do anything to improve space until we get those two things done, right?
That would probably make sense, yes.
So that's one that would create space for us, but it's not going to happen. We're not going to get more space until those two things happen. Okay. So what's the next thing? The next thing is an outside bar, which I've heard from other people too. Why don't we have a regular bar outside? I'm not even sure what we're talking about. But I guess we could look at that to start, which
Yes.
would help. That's a start.
And the food trailer.
And the food trailer. And the food trailer is already, it is budgeted in a 22 5-year plan, isn't it?
Correct, and if it gets included in the approved budget, we will be bringing you request to either go out RFP or somehow get that procurement done in late October of this year, so it would be on site for winter season.
I actually think that would be a big improvement that people would really appreciate.
I agree.
I really do.
I agree.
I think they would think that would be a big improvement. And my other question was going to be, as you gave us this, your projection here, the sheet you handed out tonight, and you showed the revenues and then expenditures and the surplus or whatever. I have a note here. So in that budget, that includes the fiscal year 22 funded projects, correct? Okay. Which includes that kitchen trailer. Okay.
John, is kitchen trailers on state bid, or is there some piggyback we could get into?
We can look into that. I'm not sure. It's probably not a standard state contract. There might be some city or county out there that's purchased one before, but then again, you're going to be purchasing one very similar to what they purchased. If this goes forward, Kathy has a lot of time over the summer to research options and bring a recommendation back to you how to proceed. ideal, in an ideal world, this goes out for RFP. There's some things that cost more than $50,000 that vendors aren't the most excited about filling out RFPs. They just want to give you their proposal. So that's a decision point right there. Do you use a formal RFP process, or do you look at new and used units? But that's all predicated on the June adoption of the budget, it being included.
Kathy, on your on that trailer, were you thinking of it just as the barbecue area replacement, or were you thinking of being able to use it at different things, like if you had a function at the 19th, or that it would be mobile, or?
It is mobile, although I wasn't planning on driving it around the bay a lot. Really, the lounge and the pool, particularly October through April, will need it.
Yeah.
And then as you know, the lounge is tight, so it really frees up that corner that has always been used as a mini kitchen for the bar, which needs more space for service. So.
Great.
Do you tow this or do you drive it?
You can tow a trailer.
Tow it.
Yeah.
Just tow a trailer. So you could in your spare time, you could possibly go around the bay with a little bell and sell hamburgers and hot dogs and things like that. Okay.
I'm for it. Now, will it have a? I know that you haven't looked at them, but I assume you probably have looked at some. Would they have like a fryer and the grill? And that's exciting.
So, again, we talked about a couple of things. We talked also we're going to have a surplus of $285,000 that we can look to spend in some way, possibly. Can we revisit the Beach Pavilion? Now, Mr. Morrissey, we're not talking about the restrooms and all that. We're talking about a pavilion that's been in there for a while, and that was going to be put up where? Not in the parking lot, but right on the beach?
No, you can't build anything on the beach. The concept was in the center of the traffic circle, basically, the grass.
The traffic parking area, okay. Again, that's in the fiscal year 22 funded project at $56,000. Are we all still in favor of that pavilion? We're not talking about the restrooms now. Those are a done deal. We're talking about the pavilion.
Again, I think it would be nice, but I don't think it's a necessary. I think keeping things closer to home where more people can take advantage of it. I'm not going to say a family wouldn't go over there and have a bang-up family reunion and barbecue, but it does take like 45 minutes to get to it. And then the other thing Roger and I were talking about is that's a high wind load area for hurricanes. If that would start to require pilings and things like that, that $56,000 I think could be better utilized around the lounge than over there.
He meant Randy.
Where are we?
I thought this. Am I on? Hello? Yeah. I thought the restrooms were part of the pavilion.
No, these are two separate projects completely. The restroom is a building we're going to put in on.
Porta potty, right?
What's that?
It's not. You're not talking about a porta potty.
What's that?
You're talking about a porta potty, or you're a standing.
No, we're talking about the restrooms are a building that we purchased that's going to go in. Okay. The pavilion is something in the center of the parking lot where you could go, like the pavilion behind lounge, the building A. Yeah. It's a place where people could just go and sit outside, a pavilion kind of.
I never knew about that. Yeah. Sorry about it.
So that's why I wanted to make sure, because you weren't here before, so I wanted to make sure you understood that these are two separate things. The beach project, meaning the restrooms, that's going in as soon as we can either get a variance or we just go ahead and do it.
Right. Okay.
But this is a separate thing for another $56,000.
A pavilion there is kind of like, there's not much room for parking. I don't know. Let alone pavilion, but yeah. Okay.
I think it's just something that we could look at as we talk about improving the lounge, that there's possibility of another $50,000. if we needed to do that. So I just bring it out that, we look at what is priority for us, and if we think it's a priority to try to make improvements at the lounge, we then have to find the money to do it without going out for some type of a loan. And this is one way we could look at.
If you take a look at the pavilion behind Building A, you'll see that it is steel and welded steel. It's a very solid structure. And I believe that the pilings that they put on that go down 4 or 6 feet, that they had to go down into the ground to anchor that one. But I think that that's going to be pretty hard to blow away. If anything blows away, it'll be the wood slats that are on top and the metal roof. But the structure itself probably wouldn't.
Mike, if you want to look at it from a different perspective, in medicine we have triage. If you triage by use, there would be much more use of the lounge area every week of the year if you wanted to commit that $56,000 to work around the lounge versus maybe, I wouldn't even say 40 a week over there. So from a population-based usage, the triage would be over by the lounge.
Question on that. Are we still subsidizing the lounge?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Again, we subsidize all the amenities in the bay.
Okay, that's what I want to know. Thank you.
And again, that's one of the things, if you remember, that I talked about when I first took over the first day as chairman, that we all understand that is the philosophy of the board, that we use the fees we get for the assessments to subsidize the amenities in whatever way we think is proper. As an example, again, you're subsidizing the pool to a total of $400,000 without any fees or anything coming in. So we subsidize the golf course, the lounge, the 19th hole, if needed, and that's always been the philosophy of this board. Mr. Coffey, we're all looking at you. Where do we go?
Have you all made a decision about the beach pavilion?
Do we want to decide that now? Beach Pavilion. Do we want to keep that in the budget? I mean, we're talking about a budget right now. If it was up to me, I would be taking it out. I mean, we've had enough trouble just trying to get the restrooms and everything in. I'm not sure I've never had anybody ask me, when is the pavilion going in out there?
I
If they
think
ask every day, when is the restroom going in?
I think we should concentrate on the restrooms. That's something that every single person going over there will use. The probability of us getting to the pavilion and going through all the rigmarole again with pilings, no pilings, engineering and all that, that's not going to happen. That's going to be at least a year out. So what I would do, like I said earlier, is I would commit that $56,000 that's there and work on some of the projects around the lounge where the majority of the people will see the improvement.
Okay. Mr. Loveland.
Yeah, I'm for defending that, at least making it a non-funded project at this point. I mean, leave it in our scope of things to do, but
Right.
unfunded.
Right. Mr. Morrissey, do you agree with that?
Okay.
Yes. Mr. Nugent.
I agree. Take
I
it
do
out.
too. Okay, so unfunded project. One less thing you have to do.
Buy a bigger food truck.
Questions, comments, other areas to go? Questions about the budget?
Got a question for you, Mr. Chairman. Many of us got letters. Some of us got phone calls. One of the constituents said to me, we ought to double our initial assessment fee. Anybody got any idea if that's a good idea, bad idea?
Double the assessment fee?
Double the, not the yearly one, the initial one. When you, social membership.
Yeah.
Double the social membership fee.
I think we're raising it by what, $50?
included is a $50 increase from $750 to $800 plus tax.
This person recommended taking it up to $1,500.
And that's a fee that a new homeowner pays one time.
Part of the rationale.
$1,500 is a big chunk, though. I mean, that's a pretty big chunk. I mean, I'm not sure I would. That's liable to deter someone from saying, I don't know.
Well, the argument given to me was people that are buying homes here are buying fairly pricey homes. Second of all, it might keep the flippers out. Third, it might cut down on the renters. I don't know how that figured out into it. But the thought was, with the budget shortfall coming up in the future, that would be a way to increase revenue without tapping on the current residents. And by the way, I think $1,500 is high.
Well, and I got a few of those calls too, Jeff. I got to tell you though, the philosophy of that would increase revenue without tapping onto homeowners is false. That's a false narrative, because these people buying in here are new homeowners. So I wasn't comfortable with that either.
Yeah, and I'm not, the rental part of it too. I'm not sure we don't want to tell people they can't rent here. I mean, if a person can't afford to buy a home and they got a family and they can come here and live and rent, that's fine. I guess I can see the raise we're doing of $50, but I just wouldn't be in favor of doing something like that, going that kind of money.
Yeah. I wouldn't want to do anything that would deter people from buying in here. And people who are buying new homes are buying new homes because some of these old homes are wearing out. So these lots are opening up, and but there's also a lot of people that are buying the older homes and totally renovating them.
Sure.
So I don't know. I don't think that we should ever qualify what we charge by how much money we assume somebody has.
Other questions, comments, budget, numbers? Are we happy with the way we are, the budget as presented?
Well, I think one question is, I assume since we've been asked to get some pricing on the outside bar and wraparound canopy, the next budget workshop in early May is on, then it's not going to be canceled.
Is what?
That you want to have another budget workshop in May?
I would, to discuss a specific thing, but as far as I'm concerned, I don't need another budget workshop to determine this budget. I mean, I think you did a great job. I don't have questions about the budget as it stands. Now, if we need to have another workshop to discuss a specific item like that, I'm fine with that.
Well, we had planned on trying to get the authorization of the mail out on the first meeting in May, to get it out a little earlier, because traditionally the people who print it and mail it out take a week to 2 weeks to get it out, even though they have great ambition each year to get it out quicker. If you don't want to have another budget workshop, we can prepare the mail out and have that ready to go first meeting in May. It's solely up to y'all. My staff who sits outside, they enjoy these workshops because they get to listen and they don't have to participate. But we're more than happy to come back if you want us to.
We're going to put a recorder out there and see what they say when we're in here.
Great idea.
Gentlemen, what's your pleasure?
Do we have anything else that we need to workshop? Because I would think that if John came back with the pieces, that wouldn't take more than half hour. Is there anything else that could be put on that workshop agenda?
But if we do have the workshop, it's going to delay him sending out that's the thing, see, it would delay that.
It wouldn't delay it. I believe the next one is it's like May 3rd or 4th or 5th. We have 2 scheduled before the first meeting in May. It's just whether you want it or not. Solely up to y'all.
Gentlemen, what's your pleasure?
Is there the ability to discuss at a regular BOT meeting these items rather than do it in workshop?
I don't know.
You can always have a discussion item at
Yeah, you can have a discussion item in the board. You can always have a discussion item at the board of trustee meeting. Absolutely.
I think it's gonna. It's looks like it's pretty in order right now. I don't see any changes coming up.
Can we do that? Can we? It's much like we did the other day. We're not necessarily looking for a recommendation. We would be looking for you to bring some things back to the board of trustees at the regular BOT meeting and hold a discussion then. Okay? Is that agreeable? I mean, I'm not trying to put words in anybody's mouth.
I'm fine with it. John, you're very good at getting that information out to us early. So why don't you just send it out to us before the board meeting, and then that way if we do have a question, we can either come and see you before the meeting or discuss that at the meeting.
And then maybe when you send that out, give us an algorithm the way you're thinking it out. I want to go with the pump house first. I want to go with the pool heater second. I want to go with this third. Give us your and Matt's and Kathy's best recommendation in what order you would take it. And then that would help us look at how much money we have and how maybe we can get the most done with the funds we have.
And
one
we're
other
a silver
question,
jacket
Kathy,
and a blue tie.
on the lounge. Okay, is that okay?
Yeah.
We settled that? Question on the lounge, Kathy, and I don't know if I mentioned this to you last time. I remember we had a workshop one time, and people really complained about the dance floor inside the lounge. Do you remember that? Were you at that workshop? And is there something that can be done with that, or is that just a complaint? I mean, is there something wrong there with the dance floor?
I think it's the size. It's the
They
size.
were talking something about the floor itself.
Well,
the kind of floor
it was more vinyl, so you can't really slide and twist,
I see.
and it could be waxed more, maybe, but we certainly wouldn't want a fall either. But that it's the size, and that you can't really twist.
Okay.
Got a question for Kathy. Did they put the dartboards back up in the lounge?
Yes, they're up. The dart leagues just haven't chosen to start yet.
Okay. That's one of the phone calls I got.
Well, but they can play. I mean, there's supplies there, and people are playing, sort of just pick-up games, but there's no formal league started yet.
Gentlemen, what else?
Mike, I'm good.
Mr. Coffey, questions for us? Need any other direction at all? I mean, I'm not sure we give you enough direction sometime, and that you understand what we're even talking about. We go back and forth so much. So, if there's nothing else, I would ask for a motion to adjourn.
I have just one quick
Yes, go ahead, Jim.
comment, and that is, having looked through the budget multiple times, I really need to give kudos to John and his staff. They've done an exemplary job.
I agree. I had a neighbor, a friend of mine, came over a week ago, and he asked me some questions about the budget, and I said, I have an idea. Take this budget home with you and keep it for a week and come back and tell me what you think. And he brought it back yesterday, and he came in and he said, wow. And I said, that's my point. There's a lot of information in there. There's a lot of detail, probably more than I even need or necessary, but it's enough detail that if you have questions, it's there. You just have to ask or search it out. And so he came back, he said, wow. Very, very, very good document. So, again, I agree.
John, my wife had a couple college semesters of accounting and looked through it and said it was wonderful.
All right. Is there a motion to adjourn? So moved. Made and adjourned.